welcome again. It's Sean Castleberry, and this is my philosophical lecture shorts. And today we're going to do a quick lecture. It's actually going to have to be in two parts, I think, on Soren Kierkegaard. Okay, he's the existential philosopher from the 19th century, and he is really what we would call the father of existentialism. So a great place to start if you're looking at existentialism. Now, one of the big things Kierkegaard wants to show us is that he believes that truth is subjectivity over what he would call objectivity. Okay, so it's right here. There. It is not objective. And what he is doing here is rejecting the Hegelian notion of reality, basically. Hegel thought if we could, I'd have to give an entire lecture on Hegel to really explain what he's talking about. But basically Hegel thought that once by using reasoning, we could eventually understand completely what the world is. And that will solve all the problems in philosophy. What Kierkegaard wants to show us is that even if we have the objective understanding of the world, we would still not have the subjective understanding, and that the meaning of our lives would still be in question. The best way to think about this is to think of objective as maybe this scientific, okay, or science. So think, even if you could get to a point that science could explain everything perfectly, explain the physical reality as what is, what Kierkegaard wants to show is that it would not solve the problems of living, okay? It would not solve the problems of living. Great. We have the theory of everything. It says this is why this happens, this is why this happens. But what does my life mean? It still doesn't prevent me from going, what career should I take? Is my life worth anything? Or it doesn't matter to me if science understands everything and I still want to kill myself. What he thinks the goal of philosophy is to do first, okay, is we need to have a subjective or find the meaningfulness in my life. That's what's most important. Objectivity, still important, but comes second. Where he thinks philosophy up to basically Hegel has always reversed it. That objective is first, subjective is second. Here we see subjective is first, objective second. And the best way to really explain this is to maybe look at some other examples. Let's take the therapist, okay? All right, take a therapist versus the therapy. All right, so you could have a therapist. Let's say she is a relational therapist. She helps you with relationships. She may be great at it. Anyone who comes and sees her, she says exactly what they need to hear. She helps them out of abusive relationships, helps them find some people. She knows the objective thing to say to anybody. But when it comes to her own life, she can't bring that meaningfulness into her life. She is an alcoholic. She can't find a relationship. She gets abused, all these things. And the point is, she may know the objective things and what to say, but if she cannot bring them into her own life and find meaning in her own life, those things don't mean diddly squat. If she is unhappy, these things do not matter. Okay. Another great example is to use the philosopher. We can find many of this case in the history of philosophy versus the philosophy. Okay. You could have a philosopher. Let's take Martin Heidegger, one of my favorites, for example, who has a very liberating, awesome philosophy. But at the same time, he may have made some mistakes in his life where he became a Nazi. Okay. Now there may be some excuses for that or not. All right, but the thing is, his philosophy, many people believe, is one thing, which is great, yet he doesn't see maybe the ramifications in his own life, especially the political ramifications. And, we have where the philosophy means one thing, the philosopher says another. Same thing with Immanuel Kant, where, he may have said never treat anyone as a means to an end, but we've seen other places where perhaps he had. Okay, and what Kierkegaard wants us to realize, he makes this statement. He says that the passionate pagan is more in the truth than a dispassionate scientist. And what he means by pagan is anyone who doesn't believe in the actual truth. Okay, he had it wrong. Let's say God is for real, and that this pagan believes in the wrong God. Okay, but what Kierkegaard is trying to say is, even if this pagan is wrong, his passion is what matters. His belief in what he believes and how he puts so much behind it, that's what matters more than a dispassionate scientist. Scientists may have the world right, but if they're dispassionate and do not like their lives, do not find meaning in their lives, then the pagan is more in the truth than the scientist. Doesn't mean a scientist can't be in the truth in Kierkegaardian terms. There are many passionate scientists, but in this case we see it's passions in one's life that matter. Okay, and that's really what Kierkegaard wants to show us and where his philosophy is all about. The best example I can think of is when I went to JMU, had a great professor. Don't agree with him on everything, but his name was Professor Romero. The one thing is he's been there for a long time, and a lot of the rest of the department was going in a different direction than he was. And most people in the department would not like what he's talking about. But of all the professors I ever met, there was never a more passionate professor. And most of the lectures I remember, most of the things I learned most came from him, even though I didn't agree with him. I mean, he was amazing. He would sit there sometimes and almost, like I thought he was going to cry at some points, or he would kind of blank out at some point. You go, what's going on? And it would be so dramatic. Some people could get on for it, but the passion he put behind it is something that taught me quite a bit. Despite whether you believe in him or not, there was something going on in that classroom that was right, something that was in the truth, I think, in Kierkegaardian terms. All right. So then let's move on to an idea that Kierkegaard presents to us, and what he thinks the self, the human being, is. Okay. He thinks we are a kind of an oppositional being, okay, between the finite and the infinite. He thinks we are both things. He thinks we are, in one sense, finite, but also infinite. Now, what does he mean by that? Let's take the finite first, okay? What does he mean by finite? Well, he means by finite, he means the day-to-day lives we live, the right nows, okay? Right now, I'm giving a lecture on video for my online classes and perhaps my other ones. Tonight, I'll go and get something to eat, maybe watch some playoff baseball, something like this. The different moments of my life that can collect up and be something, okay? It's the right now, the physical, finite place I live in. There is also, though, the infinite side of us, which is that desire to be more than just what I am here and now, to want to know what my purpose is in life, what is my meaning, when I am dead, and all these events that lead up, these finite events lead up, and I am gone, what do they mean? So in one sense, I'm here in the finite, but in another sense, I have this desire to know my infinite self. What do I mean in the internality, or we could call it the eternal self, which he does sometimes, okay? Sometimes, we get that so far? Now, that is what he thinks the self is a battle between this. He even says we are paradoxical, okay? Because how could the finite be infinite, right? We're this finite thing, yet we crave the infinite. We are paradoxical. And one thing he wants to show us is that he doesn't think that this is something we can necessarily overcome or resolve. Okay, so let's say that. We couldn't overcome it, but he does think there is some type of resolution, maybe. And what I mean by resolution is maybe some type of acceptance, okay? We're going to have to talk about that acceptance here coming up, but I think that's what we'll have to do. Our existential situation, as he claims, is this fight and battle between our finite self and our infinite self. And what we need to figure out is how can we accept this? How can we resolve it through acceptance? All right? Now, this leads us to one of his fundamental moods, one of his fundamental concepts, and that is of anxiety. He thinks because we're this finite and infinite being, all right, that we will face, because of this, anxiety. Now, what is anxiety? He basically says anxiety is fear when I do not know what it is I'm fearing, okay? Fear when I do not know what I'm fearing, okay? Basically, it's fear of the unknown. And this is a big point in Kierkegaard. He thinks in our life what's going on is I'm in this finite self, and I want to know the choice that I'm going to make. I'm making a choice. Is this career that I'm about to go to, is this really going to bring me meaning? For me, when I decided not to do construction and do philosophy, it was, for me, I had a lot of anxiety because I did not know whether going to philosophy was really going to be it. I thought that would bring more meaning. Or for example, when I want to marry somebody, if I'm in love with you, I might not know, well, hell, I could marry you or it could end in divorce. It could be terribly. It could be great. The problem is I don't know until I do it. But this is what I feel. I feel a sense of anxiety, this thing I think will bring meaning to me, yet I cannot know if it does until I do it. But once I've done it, then it's already been done. And then I'll have to make another choice about my life and another choice about my life. And what he means is fearing when I don't know what I'm fearing is because I cannot know if this choice I'm about to make is meaningful or not. Kierkegaard himself suffered with the marriage problem. Should I marry this woman he was madly in love with or go into the priesthood? Okay? And he struggled with it, and even after he made his choice of going to the priesthood, he still seemed to have some problems with it. And it doesn't have to be marriage or career. It could literally mean, what does my life mean? What do I believe in? What do I mean? These are the things that you could never really know what those are until you choose them. The problem is, once you choose them, you've already chosen them. And this is why he calls anxiety, what we have to do in the face of it, is take a leap of faith into the nothingness. Okay? And that's what he says. Of faith into the nothingness. Because we can never know what is valuable or not before we choose it. If we take a look at my Sartre lecture, you'll see a lot of that idea out there that we do not know what value is. There is no way of knowing it. It's always up to us to decide what's valuable or not. Since we cannot know that, every time we make a choice, and we have to make a choice, when we do this, he says we take a leap of faith into the nothingness. Faith. We have to have faith. And this doesn't have to be, as we'll see, a religious type of faith. It seems to be, it could also be a secular faith. Now, for Kierkegaard, it will be religious, okay? But for the rest of us, or some of us who aren't, it's a faith in perhaps what we believe in. Perhaps it's your philosophical idea, your career, your wife, your husband, okay? Just the meaning of your life, all right? Now, this anxiety, when we face it, it also inevitably leads us into what he calls despair. So another fundamental mood of Kierkegaard, okay? So he says, we also have despair. Now, what is despair, okay? First thing we need to draw our attention to is what he means by being a self. Being a self is to be aware of our finite and infinite conflict, the paradoxical relationship which that is, okay? Now, there are 3 levels, according to Kierkegaard, of despair. The first level is very interesting, okay? And as we go, we'll see these levels become more authentic and more authentic. The first being a very inauthentic level of despair, whereas the third level being the most authentic, the best position, perhaps, that we could be in. Let's take a look at the first one. The first one says not being conscious of having a self. So the self is this finite, infinite kind of position that I'm in, okay? Not being conscious of having a self would be despair that I don't even realize I'm despairing. He also calls it despair improperly so called. He means that I am this self, this finite infinite, yet I haven't realized that there's even this kind of problem going on in my life. The best example I could give is maybe some of you who've gone to college and met some of those party animals. I know I went to college and met a few of them. And they party so much every single day and do what they're doing and never even become aware that there's more to life, that they should even ask the question of meaning. They're so stuck in the finite, the right here and now, they don't go, what does my life mean? What am I going to do in the future? Will I be happy? Will I not be? That doesn't even radar on them. And he says they're such in despair, they haven't even reached despair yet. They don't even realize this is something they should be kind of agonizing over. All right? The party animal's a good one. Even the person who works every day at his job and never ever looked up to say, is there more than just to work all the time? They're stuck in this cubicle and never even think about what else they could be, or is there a better job for them, or is there something more in their life? This, he says, that he seems to look, not really look down on, he just seems to be feel sorry for some people who may be in this position, okay? This is the most inauthentic level of despair. And I bet some of us may have been in this position. And I bet some of us at least know people who we may consider this way. But then there's the next level, okay? And this is the one that I think many of us may find ourselves in. I know myself, I find myself in this one quite a bit, okay? And that is not willing to be a self. So this one means that we know what a self means, to have this finite infinite conflict or finite eternal conflict, okay? But we're not willing to go through with it. So basically it's this. I know there should be more to my life. I know there's a deeper meaning that I want to find. I know I want to be happy. Yet, I think it's impossible to ever do that. So I say, screw it, I'm just going to go and live in the finite. Okay? We could use the party animal again for this one. This person, who I may have been this sometimes, going, it's too hard to find out what I should do or what the meaning of my life is. Therefore, I'm just going to go party and screw it, I can't answer it. We could also use the person in the cubicle. Okay, this person may just really want that other job, and maybe they don't want to leave the job, or excuse me, they really want this other job. They would love to do it, find more meaning at it, but they're so afraid to get up and leave this job because, hey, if I get up and quit this job and I don't get the other job, then I might not be able to come back here, then I'll be homeless, and I just can't do it. So I'm just going to sit here in this cubicle and keep this job because I'm too worried about going somewhere else or taking that next leap, and I'm not willing to go out and try to become a self. Okay, I felt this way quite a bit getting into philosophy, not knowing, it was really worrisome. Right now I worry about it because, I think about, hey, I maybe want to move on and keep advancing my degree and keep going on to perhaps another university or something like this. Yet at the same time, I might have to leave the position I'm at now to do that. And what if it doesn't work out then? And then what if they don't let me come back? Well, I won't do anything, okay? And that is not willing to be a self. It's a higher level of despair, a more authentic version of it, but still not as authentic as we could be. Now finally, there is the most authentic, okay? But as we see, it's still under despair, so you're still despairing. But that is willing to be a self. So now I realize what I am, okay? But at the same time, I am going to go for it, okay? So I know I'm this finite, infinite self, and I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, I can know what my purpose is. I'm going to choose, and I'm going to step out and take that leap of faith into the nothingness. That is the point. And what we see this is, though, is we understand, though, that even though I'm doing it, it still won't completely resolve the problem. Because even after I accepted that thing, and after I become maybe the philosopher, or take that new job, or I decide not to be a party animal anymore and become something greater, I still will have choices to make, and still have to decide, is this something I'm really happy in? Is it not something I'm really happy in? And then I must act again, and I must choose again, and again, and again, up until my death, okay? So it's something that even though I'm willing to be a self, I still can't escape this paradoxical thing. But you know what I say to it, though? I say, screw it. I do it anyway. I'm going to go like I can do it, even though I will never be able to completely accomplish it. And what this is really characterized by, I think, is the best, is defiance. Okay? Or perhaps we could use Camus' idea of rebellion. Okay? It's a rebellion against the self, or a defying of the self. The self says I can only be this thing, but I say screw it, and I try my best to even more than I can, even though I know that I'm maybe not able to. It's more the fighting against that idea of trying and going after it, the struggling towards this choice is where meaning comes from, and that's what leads to authenticity. Though I can't overcome it, I attempt to do it anyway. This really reminds me of Albert Camus' Sisyphus, okay? This guy, he might be pushing the rock up there, but he's going to be the best damn rock pusher there's ever been. He is going to be happy, despite him always having to push that rock up the hill. In most secular or atheistic existentialists, this level right here is about the highest you can get. If we take a look at maybe Sartre, Heidegger, Camus, okay, perhaps even Nietzsche as well, this seems to be the level at which you can get at. The highest, and where is authenticity is kind of achieved. But for Kierkegaard, there may be one more level, one more way of perhaps getting outside of this. And once we look at this, we have to begin for Kierkegaard turning towards the religious. Okay? Turning towards the religious. And that is where our next lecture is going to deal with his two ideas of religion, what he calls religiousness A and religiousness B. Or on one sense, a Socratic religion versus what he prefers, in his terms, Christianity. Now, I do want to put this out there, that his understanding of Christianity is much different from the normal understanding of Christianity. But that will be in our next lecture. And this is it for now. So if you guys have any questions, please email me. If not, go on to the next lecture. So thank you very much. This is one of my philosophical lecture shorts. Appreciate it.